Perfect. Thanks for joining, everyone. Welcome to part 3 of our short and sweet webinar series for the eXact. Today, we'll be talking about the eXact Manager tools. Presenting today is Richard Gray, a solution architect at X-Rite Pantone. I'm Robert Grotans, the Global Technical Marketing Manager, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. A few things to go over before we get started. Due to the number of people that are attending today's webinar, we will keep everyone muted. If you have any questions, please use the questions function on the GoToWebinar panel. We'll have time to answer a few questions at the end of this webinar. Finally, this webinar will be recorded and you'll receive a link so that you can review the webinar at your convenience. So with that, I'll turn it over to Rich to get things started.
Thank you, Robert. Hello, everybody. And welcome to webinar 3. As Robert says, this is to do with eXact Manager, and we're going to look in a bit more detail about some of the features of eXact Manager and the functionality. Okay. Again, this is going to take the same sort of format as previous, this sort of short and sweet concept that we come through. So we're going to go through a series of slides and time for questions at the end. You may also see as well, also in the comments box, the links that you will see at on the last slide of the webinar are already posted there for you. Okay, so again, for those of you who have attended the previous webinars, you may see some of these slides on some of the previous content. We want to expand a little bit more about what the eXact Manager software actually does. Okay, so if you purchase an eXact, you get, as part of the purchase of the hardware, some complementary software. Okay, and the main part of that software is the eXact Manager itself. Okay. Now, some people use it purely as just a piece of diagnostic software, really, and we'll cover that later on. There's lots of extra functionality which you can do in the software. A lot of it is very useful, allows you to configure the device, but also use the software to, for example, build your own color libraries, access certain things. Okay, we're going to go through those in sequence now. Again, for those of you who have attended the previous webinars, you'll heard of me mention about the latest Pantone libraries, these what we call version 4 libraries. All right. Now, these are now complementary and free of charge with the eXact Manager suite. All you need to do is simply have an internet-enabled PC or Mac, download the software, and simply choose a menu option, and you will find the latest cloud-based libraries downloaded and synchronized to your machine. Okay, you don't need any subscription for this. It's complimentary as part of the software. You want to put them on your device, it's a simple drag and drop process onto the instrument that you're using. You want the same library on 5 devices, it's just the same 5 drag and drop processes. Okay. A little bit more about those libraries specifically. Those of you still using paper guides, you'll notice the new Pantone libraries released in September 2019. Got extra colors in them. There's actually 297 colors in total, and these are what we call generally the 4000 series. So you'll get numbers of 4001 upwards. These are available digitally in these version 4 libraries. They are not available in the previous version 3 or 2 libraries you may previously be using. So this is the only method to get this new data onto the eXact. What you'll also see at the end, the links and the eXact family links, is that you'll also see links to the latest software and firmware for the instrumentation. Okay. Now, PantoneLIVE is a generic term for either what we call the master libraries, the generic libraries, which most of you will be familiar with, or what we call dependent libraries. Okay, so a little bit more explanation on that. How does a dependent library differ from what we could term a master library? Well, a dependent library is what we call a dependent print condition. What that means is it is a Pantone approved library, and it will have the same number convention as the master libraries, but it is in a specific print condition. So you will find libraries, for example, for offset printed on recycled paper, printed with a flexography on a white film, for example. And what this also then gives you is a Pantone approved closest match to a master standard when your print or ink or pigment condition doesn't allow that exact match. Okay. A lot of the time this is then progressed through your compliance through certain master brand programs, which you may be familiar with. A lot of the key brands globally are pushing this concept of a single source for an individual color standard globally. This is though a subscription basis. So with a PantoneLIVE subscription, you can log on to the PantoneLIVE cloud through the software and gain access to the dependent libraries as well as master. If you're not working to Pantone, either master or dependent, what can we do? Well, you can use the eXact Manager software to simply create your own libraries. You've got your own print standards, measure them in, create your own libraries, again, drag and drop onto the device. Very simple and easy to do. If you are creating your own libraries, you will also have an option to create your own tolerance for this, okay? So you can then put an individual tolerance against an individual color, okay? You can see the icon there, the little red X on the left-hand side. You want to take the data out into another application or send it to somebody, your own data can simply be exported out as a common file format called CXF. Another feature which some of you may not be aware of because it was only introduced in a later version of the firmware is that the eXact as a handheld device also now has a feature to create your own color libraries directly on the device rather than an eXact Manager. Okay, very useful function this. So the scenario where it's been used most often is typically you have a handheld device and you are having to go to a particular customer for a press pass or color approval in some way, and the color standards that you're measuring aren't available to you. Okay, you can simply use your device, capture that data directly on the device, name it appropriately, and then when you have the option of plugging the device back into a PC or Mac, you can do the reverse process. You can drag data from the instrument back to your eXact Manager rather than the other way around. Then we can export it out, use it in other applications. Again, very useful functionality available in the latest firmware download. Again, this is all complimentary. A very useful and quite powerful tool in the eXact Manager suite is the ability to create and then distribute individual user profiles. Now, we covered this on one of the previous webinars as an outline concept, but essentially, as you can see from the screenshots, it allows you complete control over what is displayed on the screen directly and all of the settings behind it. Okay, so I can make a very complicated workflow with lots of different icons and different sub-menus within it, or I can make something which is really point and press as possible, make it as quick and easy for the operators. This can all be tested and configured on the eXact Manager suite. All of the icons that you see on the left-hand side could all be renamed if necessary, if you've got a certain naming convention you want to keep to. And then what you can also then do, simply drag and drop this user profile onto the device, as same way as you would synchronize a color library. Okay. What have I done? I've taken all of those settings and I've put them directly on the device. What that also allows me to do is take multiple devices and configure them all to be identical without ever having to actually touch any menus on the device itself. You also have a functionality in user profiles where we can lock the device with a numeric passcode as well. So you don't accidentally change any of the settings, get the wrong result. Okay. Finally, we can circulate a user profile in a file format in the same way we would circulate a color library. So we have a number of packaging converters using this functionality where each local site simply downloads the same user profile from a SharePoint, internally or externally, drags and drops it onto each of their devices, meaning that every device is configured with the same user configuration. Therefore, you can keep your operating procedures consistent site to site. A couple of other options which are a little bit more in depth on the device itself is that you have an option for a job workflow or job template workflow. This is a little bit more automated than the standard spot color workflow that we worked through on previous webinars, in that we can go into a lot more detail about what I want to measure. Okay, and I can have multiple colors within the same template. The example here we have is a template that was configured from simply by measuring in a customer press pass for a standard CMYK type workflow. Okay, now it doesn't have to be just CMYK or process colors, could just purely be spot colors as well. Not only can I measure the spot color, but I can also check my substrate compliance for color or whiteness. I can of course check overall color difference like what I didn't do normally. Best match functionality is also displayed, as you can see, but I can go further. I can then start to measure tonal values. I can measure up to 3 tints on each patch. I can start to measure overprints. I could also measure gray balance if I wanted to within the same screen functionality. Okay, so you can go much more in depth if you're looking to a much more detailed print flow type workflow, if you're looking at process or illustrative printing. Okay. If you want to conform to international print standards rather than just your own internal workings, then these are also directly available through eXact Manager. There's a download button and the software for the job templates. It will download to your local Mac or PC all of the master job templates built around these international print standards, whether you're working to G7, whether you're working to ISO, Japan Color, etc. Okay, these are pre-built, so you don't need to measure anything at all. As you can see on the right hand side, this is what the import actually looks like. All of the spectral targets, tint patches, dot gain information, overprints are all pre-built into the template. I just need to drag and drop onto my device. Okay, so I'm looking for conformance into ISO, for example, for commercial print standards. I can easily do that. Okay. What it will also bring through is that each of these individual standards have their own style of tolerance. So the tolerances in ISO 2013 are slightly different to ISO 2007, for example. These again are all built into the template for you. If you wanted to use the template as your own master, if you like, but you didn't want it quite as detailed, it's possible to take the master, duplicate it, call it something else, and edit it if you wanted to. Okay. Okay, so what if you didn't want something as complicated as that? I've got a device, and all I want to do is simply take out my measurements on screen into my PC or Mac. Okay, now we can also do this with a separate piece of software called Data Capture. As the name suggests, what does it do? It captures the data from the device. Okay. There are numerous different configurations, but the software has been simplified somewhat with the latest release in that it also has what we call a current function setup. So I can connect my instrument Bluetooth or USB to my computer, have the current function setup enabled, and as you can see from the left-hand side, whatever I display on my instrument is then automatically pasted into the computer's clipboard. This is usually using Excel or something similar, but it could be Notepad, it could be anything at all. You can easily then get out all of your master and trial data and any delta E variation you want as well. I had a number of customers then build their own custom Excel templates for their own reporting directly with this. So you could, if you wanted, just take out the individual spectral data for each trial and build something around that. Very simple to do. not to do with measurements, but the eXact Manager also has an extensive, what we call diagnostics menu. Okay, now there's numerous things you can do here. And like I said at the start, some people just use the eXact Manager software purely for troubleshooting. Okay, it's a useful remote access tool. It's possible to remote control the device screen through the software as well. There's a remote control option, so it's very useful for remote troubleshooting if someone on a remote site has an issue with the device. What else can we do? We can do internal backups and restore, of course, but we've also got firmware updates, which you can do directly through the device as well. We can also then, if you wanted to upgrade your device from a basic or a standard version to the advanced, you can do that with a simple key code access on upgrade. Paste it into the software, upgrade your device directly. Okay. So thank you very much for your time. As I said before, these links that you see now on screen were pasted into the chat box earlier. Numerous different options here. And the bottom one, again, like we mentioned before, during these current lockdown times, the color theory, understanding the numbers color, is available free of charge directly on our website. You just need to register for a My X-Rite account to get access. Okay. Thank you very much, and we'll turn it back over to Robert in case there's any questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Rich. If you have a question that you'd like to ask, feel free to do so now. While we wait for questions, I'm just going to pop up another quick poll if anyone is interested in receiving more information or having someone contact them. It looks like while the poll is up, I'll just go through some of these questions. Someone's asking, can you connect the eXact to eXact Manager using Bluetooth?
Good question. You can connect it to data capture using Bluetooth, but not eXact Manager. Okay. The reason for that is that a lot of the data transfers are quite large, firmwares, etc. So we need a hardwired connection to do that. Okay.
Is it possible to create job templates for scanning?
Not in the current eXact workflow. The handheld device doesn't support a direct scan workflow. You have to use supporting software for that. But I know the next generation of devices for press room, which X-Rite are currently looking at, will be supporting that functionality.
A few questions on custom color libraries. I don't know if you can just elaborate more on what you can do to build your custom library. Can you change column names, or what information can you add to that?
Sure, no problem. So let me see if I can just flick back.
Yeah, I'll close this poll so we can see your screen again.
Sure, no problem. I'll see if I can just whiz back a little minute. Okay. So custom libraries are fairly straightforward. I mean, it's a little bit like, let me see if I can just increase the size of this at all. A little bit difficult to see, I know. Let's just see if we can go into that a little bit. Okay, so hopefully you'll be able to see that a little bit more clearly. It's very straightforward, really. It's just a case of clicking on the plus button and you give the library a name. It can be anything you want. And then once you create a library, it's a bit just like creating a folder in Windows Explorer. It's just a placeholder for some data. And then in the library itself, you click on the right-hand plus button here. And you simply can measure in as many colors as you want. Okay, so you can either measure directly with the device, measuring a physical target, or you could bring in data from another source. So there's also options in your own color libraries to bring in something you've measured previously in another library, so you don't have to duplicate it. Or you could have 3 of your own colors and 1 Pantone, 3 of your own colors and a color standard from an ISO job template. You could really mix and match, really. Okay. Once you've got that data, sorry, one last thing. Well, once you've got that data and you've got the library, if you want to export it to somebody else, you just right-click on the library, export, send that as CXF file. That's it.
Great. So we're just about out of time for this quick, short and sweet webinar. A few more questions are just coming in. I'll export those and send them to Rich to follow up with. Sorry if we didn't get to your question now, but we definitely will follow up. So again, thanks everyone for joining today and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all. Bye-bye now.